Lawyers and police officers of Reddit. What is the dumbest reason you've seen someone get arrested? I know how annoying it is when people do this, but I'm not a lawyer or a police officer. But I do know the dumbest crime I've ever heard of. My dad's hallmate from university, a young man, walking home from a night out, passed a bus depot and decided to take a bus for a spin, help people get home, etc. Upon return to the bus depot, he was arrested on a few charges including drink driving, endangering the public, and a weird form of theft as he returned it without prompting. Following the charges, he was released awaiting trial, likely going to receive a nasty slap on the wrist, some fines, maybe a short prison stay, and a suspension of his driving license. Not long before the trial, he needed a good night out with friends, and he walked home past that same bus depot. It was just too tempting. He served 2 years. You'd think they would have improved security at the bus depot after the first incident. I arrested a guy who continually called 911 asking police to bring him weed and a cheeseburger. He then proceeded to eat the foam padding of my roll bars in the back seat. I've never seen someone trip so bad. Plot twist, you all went to get some weed and cheeseburger right after. Someone in my town crashed into a telephone pole and took out the power. The road was closed off while things were sorted out. One lady decided she couldn't take the long way home and crashed into the same telephone pole. She was arrested for drunk driving. Has anyone else noticed that the later into the night it gets, the more gold gets handed out? I have a theory that it's because everyone is drunk by this point. I haven't RBT been drunken. Not a cop or a lawyer, but I knew a guy in high school who got arrested for impersonating a police officer and pulling over a real-life off-duty cop who also happened to know him from high school and found him pretty easily because of that. XD would have given anything to see that guy's face when he realized. I work in police dispatch. You would be surprised how many people with warrants call and request officers to come to their house for unrelated things. Guess they just assume the officer won't run the monsieur. Edit. My favorite instance of someone shooting theirself in foot was just a couple weeks ago though. Someone calls up and says that another mom at the park is screaming street her kids and would like an officer to come talk to her. I smiled to myself, told the woman I would get someone headed over. Officers got on scene and sent everyone home because the park is closed due to COVID. You really tripped me out for a second when you said someone shooting theirself in the foot in context with arrests. Lol. Had to take a double read. Obligatory. Not a lawyer or a cop, but my fiancé is a cop in a major U.S. city. One of his fellow, very overzealous officers arrested a homeless guy on Christmas Day because he fell asleep in the park. The park closed at 11 p.m. so he broke the law. Yeah, everyone gives the officer shit for it still to this day. Christmas, homeless, arrested. Was there a downside? Yeah, to me it sounds like he got a warm place to sleep for Christmas. I was a seasonal officer at a beach resort. One day I was stuck in the substation working on a bunch of reports when I hear another seasonal officer and a senior officer get dispatched to a hotel for unknown reasons. 2 hours later and I'm still doing paperwork. In fairness, I took a break for lunch, and both of the officers come in with arms full of large brown paper evidence bags, like the 2 feet tall ones you out groceries in. They start pulling out the most varied amount of drugs I've seen ever. Something like 2 large vacuum bags of good weed. Not the dry shit. 2 pages of LSD tabs. A gallon bag of shrooms. And a bunch more. Apparently this 19-year-old had come to the beach to deal. He had paid for a few nights at this hotel. Well, he missed his checkout time and the hotel needed the room, so the housekeeper let herself. She undid the covers and found this buffet of drugs. The kid ended up showing up while the officers were searching his hotel room and they got high, monsieur. Impressive haul. This is like the epitome of the only break one rule at a time rule. Sticking a damn pineapple up his ass and then walking into Walmart naked with the pineapple still up in his cheeks. Did Hitler escape from hell? Does Nikki still have the flask? You're schnerius. No wonder SpongeBob lives in Bikini Bottom, monsieur. Not arrested, but I gave someone an unnecessary ticket. I drove past two girls on a sidewalk in. One was holding a beer can. I backed up and pulled up next to them, but now the beer was gone. I asked the girl where it went and she denies having a beer. I tell her to get it and dispose of it. She tells me she's 22 anyway. I respond, great. No reason to get in trouble for alcohol. Just go get the can and properly dispose of it. She denies it again. Again I tell her to just throw it away. Her friend tells her just go get it. She still denies ever having a beer. I walk a few feet back to where I saw them and surprise. There's a beer can on the ground. She got an open container ticket at 22 and a warning for littering. The worst part is after she got the ticket she asks what if I was holding it for my friend because she's not 21? I tell her I wouldn't throw my friend under the bus since she was the one in possession when I saw them, so it wouldn't have mattered. She still didn't seem to grasp that nobody had to get in trouble if she'd just picked it up. TBF to a dumb kid that probably sounded like entrapment. Just go pick up that open can of alcohol and I swear I won't give you a ticket. I would have doubts myself. I am not a police officer, but I have a friend living in my basement who is arrested and charged for assault with a weapon. The weapon in question was a tomato. He threw it at his girlfriend and she called the cops and pressed charges. He pleaded guilty and is now on probation for 12 months. I just impulsively downvoted your comment because it made me angry until I realized what I was doing. I have a friend who, while riding passenger in a car, flicked a penny out of his window at another vehicle. He was arrested, charged, and tried on launching a deadly missile. No dude, don't throw things at other cars that are fucking driving on the road. The penny weighs nothing, true, but the car is a ton of metal going hella fast and you're distracting the driver. Not a cop or a layward, but I once saw this Karen protest the lockdown and trespass on a playground. Then when the cop told her to leave and gave her multiple chances to leave, she wouldn't. Then she asked to be arrested and the cop complied, so she got arrested in front of her kids and friends. Then it turns out she staged it. That's about the dumbest reason I've seen. I mean, that's the playbook of civil disobedience. You do something that is against the law and refuse to comply until force is brought in. Then you release the footage and pictures in a way that makes the authorities seem unreasonable. The primary point is to be taken by force. Of course, this can be perceived in different lights depending on the crime. Here, most people aren't likely to take her side because of the context. In the case of, say, Rosa Parks, it's a bit different because the law was ridiculous. I'm going to be the next Rosa Parks! Exclamation mark. Exclamation mark. Same people, laughs. I was on a ride along. Guy gets pulled over. Hands his brother's ID to the officer. It is not a good match. Officer asks him when he was born. He gets that one right. Asks him how old he is. He's off by 2 years. He's being put in the car and the officer says, "You're the first guy I've arrested for bad math." My sister was a legal assistant for a while when she was in school. She went to a hearing with her lawyer and the judge asked the defendant and how much marijuana did you have on you? Quote. To which the defendant responded, "Oh no, Your Honor. It was cocaine." Not entirely sure how that got messed up, but the judge apparently gave the look of "How fucking stupid are you? A gram of weed would have been much better than a gram of coke." I used to work as a criminal defense lawyer, retired now, and I saw some weird cases. But by far the dumbest I saw was a client who was facing an indecent exposure charge. She was in a car accident, and apparently, she hadn't worn her safety belt. She was T-boned by a van. and her car flipped over before landing on the side of the road, and she flew out an open window. Through some miracle, she wasn't crushed under the car or flayed when she hit the ground. Her injuries were all pretty much superficial, but her clothes were shredded, so she ended up almost entirely naked. The prosecutor tried to spin a story about how she was technically responsible, since she had made the decision not to wear a safety belt. The jury thought it was the stupidest thing they'd ever heard, and eventually, the prosecutor dropped the charges. That was easily the worst disaster I have ever seen outside of the development of Bubsy 3D, and the way it almost killed my beloved Bobcat. Responsible? They are obviously not a lawyer and are consistently telling BS stories in their comments. Here is one conflicting example just within the first couple posts. Greater than this reminds me of my father's funeral. I was 12 when he passed away. My mom was worried that I would be traumatized or something. Then, greater than the first Toy Story movie. I remember going to see it with my dad on my 13th birthday. My mom had suddenly passed away a few months before. I don't know what these people get from making up random BS. It's kind of pathetic. She died when she flew out the window. You lose your gear when you die. She responds naked. What the hell? She was in a car crash and that's what people cared about. I think it's just a joke account trying to work Bubsy games into all his comments. The worst part of the story is how spelled responsible. I got arrested and fined for standing on a road for 2 minutes, first and only day in court. I gotta ask, why were you standing on the road? To get to the other side! Exclamation mark. I was once a witness to a small riot in my hometown. A policeman called this guy a black bastard, which started the whole fight as everyone got really angry, upset.
He was the only black guy in the town.
The thing went to court and I stood as a witness against the policeman. I got ripped apart and left crying. The policeman got away with it and the poor guy served time for inciting a riot and disturbing the peace. I was only about 16 at the time and my first realization that life and the justice system is very warped. Man steals car. Man runs out of gas. Man calls us for help because other states have spoiled their people by bringing them gas for free. Man also happens to have fully extraditable warrants, so he goes to jail and car is recovered. Literally every fucking idiot do-gooder ever. I see this unfold constantly. Asterisk calls 911 asterisk, oh yeah, there's this homeless guy walking down the street and someone should, check to see if he's okay and stuff. Make contact with the guy. Turns out he has a chicken shit warrant from like 12 years ago for failure to pay child support or something. Have to take him to jail. I made a point to call the person who initially called it in, and when they asked if he was okay, I made sure to tell them that them calling us is what got this dude arrested and thrown in jail. Shit like this happens all the time. It's like divine intervention. Every time we get a call to check on someone's welfare, they end up getting arrested. Sometimes it's because they have a warrant. Sometimes it's because they reach for their ID and a bag of crack falls out of their pocket right in front of you, leading to some awkward eye contact. Yeah, the problem is definitely with the person who thought they could trust you to check if a homeless guy is dying, not with the system that tells you to arrest almost everyone you welfare check. There's literally no reason for this person to call at all. Someone who is obviously homeless is just walking down the sidewalk minding their own business, and some idiot feels the need to inject the man into a random stranger's life. If they're laying face first on the sidewalk in a pool of blood, please call. If they're minding their own business, then people need to do likewise. The funny part is if you ask the people who call it, and did you ask him if he was doing okay? The answer will always be no. They do this fake drive-by act of kindness so they can tell themselves they're good people. They're too chicken shit to actually get out of their air-conditioned car, walk up to a stranger and look at them in the face, and ask if they're okay. Maybe it is divine intervention. God wants the fucker to pay for not paying child support. One of my friends was going to get a ticket for having an open container of alcohol for walking back to his house, about 1 to 2 blocks away, with the remainder of a liquor bottle. It turned into an arrest when the officer told him he was getting cited. My friend says he took a swig and threw the bottle into the empty field. Being a drunk, obnoxious person. The police claim that he threw the bottle at the officer and spit it. Hi monsieur. Every other weekend I have dumbass Lyft Uber passengers in my backseat with an open bottle arguing. But the lid is on. Just get out. Thank you so much for watching and have a good day.